Let's turn our attention now to the war in the Middle East. Palestinians have been fleeing Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza. That's after heavy fighting were reported there. Israeli military encircled that area where it said Hamas had regrouped. The refugee camp has been under heavy bombardment since Saturday. Military also in Hamas wing also said that if it was battling troops east of that camp area. Meanwhile, UN's main refugee agency in Gaza estimates that almost 360,000 people have fled the southern city of Rafah since last week Monday, when Israel ordered a major evacuation of the city. Palestinians have been fleeing the city, which almost appears to be a ghost town at the moment ahead of the planned major ground offensive. But UNRWA's Commissioner General Filipe Lazzarini warned that no place is safe in Gaza, indicating that the claim of the humanitarian safe zone is false and misleading. Egypt has said that it will support South Africa's genocide case against Israel at the International Court of Justice. A statement by the government says that Egypt's decision to intervene in the lawsuit was taken in light of an escalating severity and the scope of Israeli attacks against Palestinian civilians in the Gaza Strip. Well, according to the statement, these attacks include deliberate targeting of civilians, infrastructure destruction, forced displacement, and creating unbearable living conditions, leading to an unprecedented humanitarian crisis in Gaza. It also added that these actions constitute a flagrant violation of international law, humanitarian law, and the Fourth Geneva Convention of 1949 regarding the protection of civilians during wartime. Egypt reiterated its call to the United Nations Security Council and the international partners to take immediate action to halt human rights violations in Gaza and to stop Israel's military offensive in Rafah. The Israel Defense Forces, IDF, has yet again announced the opening of a new humanitarian aid crossing into Gaza. Well, the IDF says that this move is in coordination with the United States. A statement by the military says the Western Erez crossing was opened in the area of the northern Gaza Strip for the transfer of humanitarian aid to the residents of the besieged Strip. But the UN World Food Programme, WFP, said the southern crossings to Gaza had not seen aid in 3 days. Over the weekend, Egypt said it will not coordinate an entry of aid into the Rafah crossing, citing security concerns. In the meantime, the United Nations Children Emergency Fund, UNICEF, says that no aid has crossed into Gaza in the past days, calling for more supplies in order to continue humanitarian operation there. The Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says that the shortage of fuel makes movement of civilians who need medical attention very difficult. For the World Health Organization, lack of adequate medical supplies puts the system in the health sector at the brink of collapse.
For 5 days, no fuel and virtually no humanitarian aid has entered the Gaza Strip, and we are scraping the bottom of the barrel. This is already a huge issue for the population and for all humanitarian actors, but in a matter of days, if this is not corrected, the lack of fuel will really grind the whole humanitarian operation to a halt.
Closure, especially of Rafah crossing and Kerem Salem, has severed access for us to fuel, to supplies, and the movement of humanitarian staff. It's also affected the movement of any civilians that could go out to a medical evacuation. The World Food Programme in UNRWA will run out of food for distribution in the south by tomorrow. That means that people will be left only with what has already been distributed in their shelters, in their homes, and on site. As of today, we have 12 bakeries supported by humanitarian partners here in South Gaza. 8 have ceased to operate due to lack of fuel in stock, and 4 that are still operating at reduced capacities will be out of that stock by Monday.
Even if you've got somebody back from the brink, you've operated on them, you've put them on a ventilator stops, they no longer breathe. So without fuel, no matter what everybody's done, the whole system collapses. A lack of sewage services, lack of clean water means that if the bombs don't get you, you die of thirst, infectious diseases, or simply hunger.
The United States of America has congratulated the Israeli people and their government as the state marks its 76th anniversary. Locals were seen marking the holiday in Yom Run and the streets of Jerusalem, but some also observed a 2-minute silence to celebrate the Remembrance Day. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the current war against Hamas, as in previous wars, represented external values, love of man and nation, love of the country, willingness to sacrifice, belief in the righteousness of the way. The United States was the first country to recognize Israel's statehood when Israel declared independence in 1948. Its history of shared democratic values, trade, deep cultural ties, and commitment to regional security has provided the basis for both countries' strong partnership and their friendship. The Memorial Day honors Israeli soldiers who died in service to their country. Meanwhile, hundreds of pro-Israeli protesters marched in the streets of Berlin to denounce anti-Semitism and demand the release of hostages held by Hamas. Protesters held up protests showing and posters showing pictures of captives, as well as waved flags to Israeli and other European countries.
I think the Jewish people belong to Germany, and I think we need to make a stand that they still have to be safe here in Germany. And that's what I stand for. That's why I'm here.
Because I'm concerned about the situation not only in the Middle East, but here in Germany and in Berlin. The anti-Semitism that leads to more and more violence against Jewish people living here. Yeah, I want to show my solidarity and that they are not alone here.
Hundreds of pro-Palestine students, activists rallied outside Pomona College graduation ceremony in Los Angeles on Sunday. Demonstrators marched holding Palestinian flags, chanting slogans, but protesters alleged that educational institutions were funding genocide and demanded that they cut all ties with Israeli-affiliated companies. The graduation ceremony was originally planned to take place in Pomona College in Claremont, but it was relocated to a venue roughly 65 kilometers away from pro-Palestinian activists who refused to vacate a protest camp at the main campus.
We're here because we are demanding that business as usual does not continue while the administration is funding genocide. And we've given the administration, time and time again, we have said that your graduation won't get disrupted if you just divest. And they chose to, inconvenience families by, 2 days prior moving their graduation an hour away from the college and making it at 6 p.m. rather than 10 a.m. The police are here because they are here to protect property. They are here because the Pomona College administration is scared of the student and global movement that is calling for divestment. And so they're willing to arrest and brutalize their students. And the same brutality that the police deploy here, these police are trained by the soldiers who are committing the genocide in Gaza.
Let's now join a global affairs analyst, Edward Okwa, for more on this. Hello, Mr. Edward, and thank you for joining us on The World Today. What do you make of the U.S. pausing the shipment of bombs to Israel on the basis that some weapons actually being supplied are being used in the war? I mean, anyone will say, isn't that the purpose of supplying Israel weapons in the first place?
Well, thank you for having me. What is going on in Gaza between the Israelis and the Palestinians is just proof of, we live in a very volatile world. Despite all the global institutions that have tried to intervene to see an end to this, it's not happening because the U.S. on one hand, because of their relationship with Israel, will keep supplying them with the arms they need. And then on one hand, they want to give Palestinians the food. Why don't you just, stop both sides, giving arm to one side and giving food to the other side? Because, that's not just comparable. So what you have is this, unending situation that has caused a lot of tension both in the Middle East as well as all over the world. So I wish I have a solution, and I wish I have an idea what to end this. But the two sides seems not to be able to come to terms, in order to have a peaceful coexistence.
But if you recall, over the weekend, the UK, through its foreign secretary, spoke of the danger of banning the sale of weapons to Israel, saying that, of course, it will work towards Hamas's advantage. Why are allies reconsidering their position on the sale of arms? We're asking, could this be a worldwide protest? Does it have anything to do with this?
Well, I mean, UK, US, they somehow try to complement each other and support each other. And I don't know, the Jewish worldwide resource is powerful, and no matter how you look at it, they're going to come around, and they have a way to influence things in the capital, Washington D.C. as well as London, in order for them to do what they have to do. And the British people, again, I don't know what weapons they're giving them, but it's just more like a solidarity thing for U.S. and then that's emboldening Israel to keep doing what they're doing.
Now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to defeat Hamas despite U.S. arms threat just last week. In a video message which posted on social media platform X, it said that Israel will stand alone. But do you think that Israel can actually finish this war with Hamas without the support from any of her allies?
Well, Benjamin Netanyahu is a warmonger. Unfortunately, has been Israeli prime minister as long as he has been. He has outlasted so many U.S. presidents and so many British prime ministers, and they have internally built their own weapon system, and they still get some help from U.S. and U.K. and whomever else that is supporting them. I don't think he's prevailing because since this started October last year, with all his intelligence and military might, he hasn't been able to rescue the hostages. So he's going on destroying things and inflicting injuries on civilians. But, you would think with all the claims about being a superior power, by now they would have been able to pinpoint where the hostages are and go directly there and rescue them, but they haven't. So that tells you the human spirit is very resilient. You may point the gun at people and shoot them, but when people resolve not to back down, that's what's going on between the Hamas people and the Israelis. And it's a shame because Israelis not making any progress. They can take every piece of Hamas or a Palestinian and they still haven't been able to do what it is that would give them that hero's welcome. So, Benjamin Netanyahu is just a warmonger. The gentleman is very irrational in his thinking, and he believes that he's going to win this war, but I don't think he will.
All right, but in the meantime, the UNGA voted just last week to admit the Palestine into the assembly. Israel is completely against that move. You have supported a two-state solution to the current crisis. I mean, do you see any challenges ahead?
Well, anytime you're going to admit, the Hamas people, Israel is going to oppose it. Because Israel wants to be the one that dictates what solutions has to be. They are not accommodating of the opposing side. And the reason they do that is because they think they have the military might. But, from time to time, it's been shown that their military might is not getting them the peace, they want. And so in order to show that they're still going to be standing and fighting, they're going to do what they are doing. I think now with the Palestinian population outside of Palestine protesting, showing up, they are now getting a little more nervous because before now, Palestinian Americans or Palestinian Germans or anybody, they just keep quiet. Now they're pushing back, and Israel is having a tough time on his hand in order to come to peaceful resolution.
All right, the pro-Palestinian protesters are making things uncomfortable for Jewish students and academic institutions. Now, should these protests continue, and do you think that they're having any impacts so far?
I think they have an impact because everybody's talking about it. I mean, protest is the right of anybody who feels abused, and they shouldn't be violent. But, at some point, somebody's going to lose it, and it goes violent. So what they're doing across their campuses in U.S. and cities and city halls and government and our buildings is to show that, hey, we are here. When the money U.S. gives to Israel is taxpayers' money. It's not just money of the Jewish people. It's everybody's money in it. So maybe we need to come to terms and say, if America is going to be supporting anything outside of America.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Edward Okpa. He's a global affairs analyst, and we've been talking about the war between Russia and Ukraine. And whatever he said there, it's totally his own view on this program and not the view of Channels Television, just to get that straight.